Welcome, Association for the Study of Negro History and Life, as a John Brown researcher. And in researching John Brown, of course, I had to read the book that W.E.B. Du Bois wrote about John Brown. And he truly loved him because Du Bois went all the way to Lake Placid in a place called Timbuktu, where African Americans had been given land and built a colony. And Du Bois went there and he took off his shoes and he said, "I know I'm standing on holy ground." And I visited Lake Placid last summer and visited John Brown's farm and walked on with my shoes off. I took my shoes off, and I can say now that I have walked on holy ground, and I have walked on the same ground that W.E.B. Du Bois walked on. Wow. We had, and are still having a great debate among the Du Bois scholars and the Booker T. Washington scholars about the agenda for African American people in this country. And somehow or another, this debate has never been settled. I think we just like to really talk about it, and I think we both understand that those two African American men truly were working in the interest of our great-great-grandfathers. After Du Bois thought about it for a while, this is what he said about black labor. The average American can easily conceive of a rich land awaiting development and filled with black laborers. To him, the Southern problem is simply that of making efficient workmen out of the material by giving them the requisite technical skill and the help of invested capital. The problem, however, is by no means as simple as this, from the obvious fact that these working men have been trained for centuries as slaves. They exhibit, therefore, all the advantages and defects of such training. They are willing and good-natured, but not self-reliant, provident, or careful. If now the economic development of the South is to be pushed to the verge of exploitation, as seems probable, then we have a mass of working men thrown into relentless competition with the working men of the world, but handicapped by a training the very opposite to that of the modern self-reliant democratic laborer. What the black laborer needs is careful personal guidance, group leadership of men with hearts in their bosoms, to train them to foresight, carefulness, and honesty. Nor does it require any fine-spun theories of racial differences to prove the necessity of such group training after the brains of the race have been knocked out by 250 years of assiduous education in submission, carelessness, and stealing. After emancipation, it was the plain duty of someone to assume this group leadership and the training of the Negro laborer. I will not stop here to inquire whose duty it was, whether that of the white ex-master who had profited by unpaid toil, or the northern philanthropist whose persistence brought on the crisis, or the national government whose edict freed the bondsmen. I will not stop to ask whose duty it was, but I insist it was the duty of someone to see that these working men were not left alone and unguided, without capital and without land, without skill, without economic organization, without even the bald protection of the law, order, and decency. Left in a great land not to settle down to slow and careful internal development, but destined to be thrown almost immediately into relations and sharp competition with the best of the modern working men. That leadership fell to Booker T. Washington, and I thank you for listening. It seems to me, said Booker T., shows a mighty lot of cheek to
study chemistry and Greek. When Mr. Charlie needs a hand to hold the cotton on his land, and when Miss Ann looks for a cook, why stick your nose into a book? Well, I don't agree, said W.E.B. If I should have the drive to seek knowledge of chemistry or Greek, I'll do it. Charles and Miss can look another place for hand or cook. Some men rejoice in skill of hand, and some in cultivating land. But there are others who maintain the right to cultivate the brain. Seems to me, said Booker T, that all you folks have missed the boat. Who shout about the right to vote and spend vain days and sleepless nights in uproar over civil rights? Just keep your mouth shut and do not grouse, but work and save and buy a house. Well, I don't agree, said W.E.B. What can property avail if dignity and justice fail? Unless you help to make the laws, they'll steal your house on a trumped up clause. A roast is tight and fire's hot, no matter how much cash you got. Speak soft and try your little plan, but as for me, I'll be a man. It seems to me, said Booker T. Oh, I don't agree, said W.E.B.
All right.
November 22nd, 1963. I saw you there, Daily Plaza. She wore a pink pillbox hat. Fragments of her husband's brain splattered upon her dress. I saw you there, Daily Plaza. 3 gunshots. 12 o'clock noon. Fragments of her husband's brains scattered upon her dress. Roses, bloodstains, her pantyhose. And she said, I want them to see what they did to my husband. Fragments of her husband's brains scattered upon her dress. November 22nd, 1963. I saw you there at Daily Plaza. She wore a pink pillbox hat. The sun shining. 12 o'clock noon. Fragments. Bloodstains. Daily Plaza. Fragments. Limousine. Black. Cold. Sunny day. Dallas, Texas. 1963. Martin. Memphis. 1968. Lorraine Hotel. 3 gunshots. Chicken sandwich he ate. April 1968. She wore a pink pillbox hat and fragments of her husband's brain scattered upon her dress. November 22nd, 1963. Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're black. You remember things like living in Woodlawn with no inside toilet. And if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself, or how good the water felt when you got your bath in one of those big tubs that folk in Chicago barbecue in. And if you become famous or something, somehow it never gets across how you understood their feelings as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale. And even though your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock, and another dream goes, and though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that made any difference, but only that you and your sister have happy birthdays and very good Christmases. And I really hope that no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand that black love is black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy.